Well, a good ground cover can serve very heartily in the landscape. Many times we try to plant grass in an area where there's too much shade for several seasons until finally we give up and we put down a ground cover. And actually that's the perfect thing to do. We're going to look at several ground covers today, and to start with, I wanted to show you this one. This one is called Beacon Silver Lamium, also known as dead nettle. And you can see how it gets its name from the foliage here. We have a silvery sheen on the leaf, and then we have a green edge. Now, beacon silver has a flower that is kind of a purple to pink color on it, and it flowers in the late spring to early summer. Now, this plant likes a shady area. It can have dappled sun in the morning, but it really needs to be shielded from that late afternoon sun. The other thing that it likes is to be planted in a moist area that is well drained. So it's not a drought tolerant ground cover, and it doesn't like our hot winds, but in an area like this among trees it's perfect because it's kind of sheltered from the wind, and we have this nice bright spot. That's one of the nice things about using a variegated or a bright colored ground cover, is that it can really help to lighten up a spot. Now, this one is called Beacon Silver. There's one called White Nancy, which I have right here, that has the white flower. And as we compare the two, you can see they have very similar leaves. It's just that the flower is different. And so you could interplant these and have a nice purple and white bloom. Now, this ground cover will get about 8 to 12 inches tall and spread out very nicely in this area. Now, we've got some in our mint garden that are really pretty. We'll take a look at those. Well, many of our ground covers are in the mint family, and right here in our mint garden we have another selection of dead nettle. This particular cultivar is called Arium, and you can see how it gets that name. We have a beautiful yellow to almost chartreuse foliage here, and it really does glow. It also looks nice in contrast with our purple flowers here. Now, the purple won't persist all summer, but this nice foliage will. And this basically takes the same care as our other dead nettles. It needs to be in a shady place. Dappled morning sun is fine. It also needs to be well drained but kept moist. So this is not a ground cover for a drought situation. It needs to be in an area where it can be kept moist. But you can see here it looks very nice interplanted with some of our coleus that we have here in a shady spot. Now, right next to it we have another great ground cover, and this is a variation on one that's kind of a workhorse of ground covers. This is Auga, or bugleweed, and this particular one is called Burgundy Glow. And again, you can really see how variegation in the leaves can really brighten up an area. This has some beautiful green, cream, and purple to almost pink leaves on it, and it really is a nice plant for a shady area. Now, the Auga will take a little bit drier conditions than our lamium over here. However, you do want to make sure that you don't let it get too awfully dry. Now, it spreads by runners, and what you'll notice when you have a variegated Auga is that over time what will happen is some of it may want to revert back to its green form or some off forms. If you remove those, you can keep this nice color here if you remove the ones that are not true to type. So Auga is very good for the garden. Now, we're going to take a look at a couple of ground covers that'll take a little bit drier of a spot. Now, blue plumbago, which you see here, is a ground cover that'll take a little bit more sun, and especially that morning sun. We've got it planted right here where it gets sun most of the day, and then it's shielded from the evening sun, and it does wonderfully. Now, this plumbago gets to be, anywhere from 8 to probably 10 inches tall. You can see here it's a pretty carefree plant once it's established. Now, again, I was saying that it'll take drier conditions than our other ground covers that we looked at. Once you get plumbago established, it is fairly drought tolerant. Now, you'll need to watch the water on it when you first plant it. And the thing that it doesn't like to be in an area where it stays wet, because it won't live through that. It also really doesn't take much care. A little bit of clipping of the old off in the spring and letting it come up. Now, the flowers that you see, which are really pretty on it, are from June to July. So the flowers are not present all season long. However, the foliage is a very nice ground cover for it. Now, again, this is hardy here in Oklahoma. However, it is a deciduous ground cover. So again, we're going to have an area here that isn't covered throughout the winter, but it looks good during the summer months. Well, our last ground cover is one that's actually an ornamental grass that likes the shade. And this is golden Japanese forest grass, and we've shown this to you before, but I wanted to show you how it's spreading out and really making a very nice ground cover. Again, this is one of the ornamental grasses that takes shade. In fact, it requires shade, and some dappled early morning light is good for it. However, it needs to be shielded from that late afternoon sun. Also, since it's an ornamental grass, once it's established, it is fairly drought tolerant. So this is a nice ground cover for this area. It's spreading out, and again, the variegation makes really brighten up this corner of shade.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.